the program. So over to you, Thomas.
Everyone, can you hear me correctly? I'm in a place where the internet is a bit poor, but yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This is a very important moment for JOGL, and I hope for open technology development for Africa. And so we've been working on this approach for everything started when I first joined Africa Open Science and Hardware, the Africa Open Science and Hardware community, about 3 years ago already, and when we, it was even before that we launched JOGL. JOGL was launched in July 2019, and so from the very beginning of JOGL, the idea was to support communities that are doing open science and open source technology development anywhere in the world, and it's so it became very obvious that we needed to collaborate. Oh, I'm sorry for the background noise. To collaborate very strongly with the African community, because the perspectives are extremely relevant in terms of how to make things more frugal, more agile, and also more affordable. And so it's also a way to provide an alternative to institutional science and corporate science, and we by working with our African collaborators, we understood that this was also very much needed, and so we've been working with Gamili on creating a framework that is more adapted to the African context, and we really hope that we'll be able to collaborate with all together in order to bring open science and open source technology on the upper level all together. So this is just the beginning. We are living now in a post-COVID era where community science, the community approach for doing science and technology has way more legitimacy than it had before COVID, because of all the beautiful collaborative effort that were born out of the COVID crisis. And so it's a unique moment in history where we can really serve that wave, and develop community-driven science and innovation. So yeah, I'm very excited to have all of you here, and I cannot wait to see what we'll be able to do. And so thank you again, and I leave the mic again to Gamili to lead us all the way to where we want to go.
You're on mute.
Oh yeah, I hope you can all see my screen okay. Cool.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so like Thomas said, the idea is that how can we create programs, create communities that enable the development of open science and technology in Africa. And so this is our agenda for today. I'll be taking you through how JOGL approaches open science and open technology for development. We will have the opportunity to learn from 2 projects that have been using the community approach. So we have VoltSchool, which is an initiative from Nigeria, led by Obasegun, and Gmo Detective, an initiative from Switzerland, also with strong collaborations in Africa, led by Rachel. I will tell you a little bit more about what we are planning for JOGL Africa, and then there will be the opportunity for us to have discussions around open science and open tech. And also in breakout sessions, we'll learn more about the various projects and initiatives that you are all involved in. So basically, like I was saying earlier, our idea is to present JOGL and JOGL Africa to you. And at the same time, really connect with you, connect with the various initiatives and projects you are working on, and collectively build a vision on how can we link open science and open technology to sustainable development. So if you are just joining us and you haven't introduced yourself yet, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us your name, tell us where you are based, where you work, and why are you interested in this topic of open science and tech. So I'm sure many of you are either working in research or innovation field, or if you're not working in research or innovation field, just because of how technology has become a very important aspect of our lives, you certainly are interested in knowledge. How do you find information on something, and then how do you use that information to either better your life or contribute to your community or earn more money, etc., etc. But then around the world, we realize that research and innovation hasn't been responsive to the needs of communities, because research oftentimes is driven by either the curiosity of scientists or the people funding the research, or in the case of industrial research, is driven mainly by the need to make money or to make profit. And so open science and tech seeks to involve more people in research and innovation. And so through this process of democratization and also taking advantages of digital technologies like the internet and all this idea of do it yourself, there's opportunity now for everyone to be involved in science and innovation. And this discussion around open science and technology being linked to sustainable development, it's one that has assumed a global importance. So the United Nations through UNESCO, for example, has been holding lots of consultations on this topic. And I'm sure many of you are involved in this in one way or the other. Either you are keen on open educational resources or open access or open data, and those of you who are in the tech space, open source, for example, it's a very important paradigm when we consider this. And so what JOGL seeks to do is to create the opportunity for project leaders like researchers, activists, innovators who feel like there has to be a different way from the norm to come together and build communities. But at the same time, because it's a digital platform, they have the opportunity to also bring on board contributors who may be students, who may be normal citizens, or who may even be experts, experts in various institutions, to come together to build online communities. And so in JOGL, we build communities. And at the same time, we go beyond that to also host other communities so that we can collectively solve the challenges of our time. And within these communities, we develop programs. And within these programs, we set specific challenges. So Thomas was talking, for example, about the COVID-19 crisis and how in trying to create solutions to address COVID, we've been able to build a global community. And within that, then individuals who have their projects on our platform can also link up to some of the challenges and the programs that we have. And ultimately, creating the landscape to help us to achieve the sustainable development goals, for example. And like I was saying earlier, very few people are involved in research and innovation around the world. The global population is 7.7 billion. Less than a seventh of this global population are in the higher education sector, be they students, researchers, or lecturers. But even within that 1 billion, there are only 8 million active contributors to scientific research in the world. So the goal of JOGL is to increase that proportion. That small dot should become bigger and bigger. And with all of you, the goal will be expanding people who are involved in research, a proportion of people who are involved in research, increasing that proportion to be even bigger than this blue shade over here, because everyone can be a scientist and everyone can be a problem solver in the world. And so some of the programs we have been working with include co-immune, which address vaccine hesitancy, the Open COVID-19, which basically created a global community of problem solvers to address different aspects of the coronavirus crisis. So we'll be learning more about Rachel's project, for example, that was looking at the issue of diagnostics. Antibiogo, which is looking at how do we take advantage of digital tech to fight antibiotic resistance around the world. And a new program called Epidemium, which we'll be launching later, which is also looking at taking advantage of big data, to look at how to understand cancer and deal with it. And so in terms of, just to give more information about the Open COVID-19 and how JOGL deal with it, I would like to invite my colleague, Chris, who is also on the call, to speak a little bit more about this.
Yeah, so during the COVID-19 crisis, we were really lucky to get a grant very early on. And immediately we had to give money to everyone, but we don't like the idea of a few people deciding who gets the money. It shouldn't be just a couple people on a grant board. We think that everyone should be able to decide, especially applicants. Applicants a lot of the time are experts. And so we designed a grant system where, as an applicant, you can say how well you think other applicants have done. And this made a democratic process for marking each other and peer review. And so in the end, from March last year, 2020, to now, we've given 110,000 euros to 36 projects, and they've come out with incredible results, like 6 papers. Papers have been written about the process as well. We've had 22 different solutions created. And I think we're going to hear more about one of those really cool projects in a bit. So yeah, I hope that we can apply some of the same principles of democratic science to make local and from the ground up solutions in Africa as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chris. And as has been indicated here on the slide, we've had 36 funded projects with the Open COVID-19. And I think one of there are so many interesting projects, and one that was particularly relevant is campaigns against misinformation, for example. We all talk a lot about fake news, and even within the scientific context, there's a lot of false information going around. And so it's really interesting for a global community to be able to identify and prioritize the challenges they want to address, and be able to collaborate openly to address them. And so this is just like an example of some of the projects that have been part of the Open COVID-19 initiative. So we are really lucky today to have Rachel from Gmo Detective with us. So you'll be learning more about how this specific project is. But if you're interested in joining some of these projects or learning more about them, then you're welcome to visit the JOGL platform and check out Open COVID-19 to see a range of projects by innovators and problem solvers like you from around the world, and actually including projects from Africa as well. And JOGL is not just about a tech platform on which you can create your projects and initiatives. It's actually more of a global community. Yeah, we are all scattered all around the world, but we connect through our global community call series, for example. And in this global community call series, we have updates from different project leaders. They also report back on some of the challenges they face, and colleagues from around the world suggest solutions to address these challenges. We also have celebrations where we celebrate people who have done outstandingly well. For example, one of the projects was in the finals of the X Prize, which is a global competition for innovation. And just a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated our 2-year anniversary. And so that's where this picture is coming from. You can see people like Oba, people like Joy, people like Sibel, Mark, and JOGL community, and of course Rachel also, JOGL community members from around the world attending and participating. And so we are all over the world, but as you can see, there's so much concentration on Europe and USA. So how do we build a global community where there's more participation? It's heartwarming to see that there's some contribution from East Africa here, West Africa, bits in South Africa, for example, but can we be able to grow this global community all around Africa, in Southern America, and also beyond South Asia? I think there's a lot of participation in South Asia as well, to all over the world. And so that is the challenge for us. And I guess with JOGL Africa, we have the opportunity to show how this can be done for other regions of the world to also replicate. But JOGL is not just about diversity of people in location. We are also about diversity of skills. And the reason why this particular slide is important is the fact that in developing your project and initiative, you need people with expertise in different disciplines and different areas. And oftentimes it's quite difficult to get that support. But on JOGL, we have people with a wide range of skills, from data science to molecular biology to coding, machine learning, 3D printing, social science research, etc. And so this therefore creates the opportunity for us to be able to have connections with individuals from around the world who can also contribute to whatever initiative or projects that we are working on. But going beyond the JOGL platform, the JOGL community, we've also introduced new tools that I hope in the future we'll have the opportunity to show you into details. But one of our main features that was recently launched during our 2nd year anniversary is called JOGL Spaces. And basically it's a way for community leaders to use JOGL to promote their communities and organize their communities. So I'd like to invite our community lead Paige to explain to us a little bit about how JOGL Spaces works.
Yeah, so JOGL Spaces was born out of kind of a new direction for JOGL. If previously we were focused on thematic programs, we realized there were hundreds of communities of practice around the world that needed a digital space to interact and a good structure for that interaction. So in this kind of GIF, you can see scrolling down is our JOGL HQ space, kind of the first created. But we have a few JOGL Africa spaces already up that I'll post in the chat. But basically, you can gather your community in a space, and you can, in that members tab, you'll have all your members with little cards that show kind of their short bio and their skills. And in the projects tab, it'll gather all the projects that your community is working on, all the needs that there are in your community. You can post updates to show events that are happening or kind of gather your community around a specific goal. You know, precise in the FAQs in the about section, what you're about, define yourselves, and that's kind of it for a short introduction. But basically, we're really happy about it. It's still in development, so it's still a beta feature. And if you want to open one, please contact me. I'll put my email in there. Yeah, it's a great way for you to kind of gather your community, interact in the digital world, and also interact with other communities across JOGL. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Paige. I mean, the thing I like about JOGL Spaces is the fact that if you have one space, you can actually create multiple projects within that space for your community rather than having to create multiple spaces just because you want to represent multiple projects. And so beyond JOGL Spaces and what we've done so far, what really matters is how individuals are able to take advantage of this model and also to grow and develop their own projects and initiatives, and what we can learn from these examples in order to be able to advance on our own goals and mission. And so I have the unique privilege to present the project spotlights. We have two project spotlights. The first spotlight we have is coming from Nigeria. We have Obasegun Ayodele from VoltSchool with us today. So over to you, Oba. Hello, Oba. Are you in?
Yes, okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me to talk about our work at VoltSchool under the JOGL initiative. I think we had a video which Kamali, you said you're going to play. So I'm happy to just wait for the video to play.
Okay, yeah, so we have Oba's video.
Yes.
Oba, can you please introduce yourself a little bit more whilst I load your video?
Okay, so I'm Obasegun Ayodele. I'm the co-founder and lead for VoltSchool. We're a research and development center based out of Nigeria. And our goal is to see how we can apply open science and technology projects, principles, concepts in local contexts for Nigeria and across Africa. And based on the stats which Gamali gave earlier, when we look at the African population from the world context, we have 12.5% of the world population to be Africans. And we still contribute only 1%, to the global research which comes out of Africa. So what we're trying to do is to take most of all those innovations, ideas, which are published in form of open science kind of project, and see how we can contextualize it for local impact in Africa. And that's at the core of what we do. The VoltSchool initiative came up from the COVID-19 initiative of JOGL. Yes.
Yeah, the video is ready.
Okay.
So can I just? Yeah.
So you have the video.
Hello, everyone.
Yes. Should I go ahead?
I'll just take a step back and let the video play.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to the JOGL team for
Yes,
supporting VoltSchool to democratize STEM education across Africa. The VoltSchool platform is aimed at supporting the millions of students who were out of school as a result of the pandemic. And it's a digital STEM learning platform that is contributing to promoting quality education, SDG4, in Africa by providing high quality secondary school level learning materials in a fun, engaging, and interesting way. The platform can be accessed on digital devices of all screen types, laptops, desktops, tablets, smartphones. The videos are very light and can be accessed on mobile networks with a minimum 2G connectivity. The digital learning materials have been adapted for hearing and visually impaired students. And this is very important for us because at the core of the VoltSchool platform, we want it to be inclusive. We want it to be a safe space. Other features include assessments and a chat forum that allows for social interaction between students and teachers in a safe space, free of cyberbullying and abuse. And this is really, really something that is at the core for us, because we realize that one of the most interesting things that makes learning fun in the traditional four-wall setting of education is the social interaction. And we wanted to ensure that we had that embedded. VoltSchool is currently available in English language and conforms to the approved curriculum of the West African Examination Council. VoltSchool has over 10,000 students from over 9 countries as of March 2021. We launched last year, April, and it's so remarkable for us to see the transformation and the feedback of users that we've gotten from across all these countries. VoltSchool was recently recognized by the African Union as top 50 innovation for education across Africa in 2020. And this really was at the core for us in terms of further espousing the work which VoltSchool is doing across all these countries, and it gave us more motivation to do more of this work. With the over 10,000 students which we have on VoltSchool, we have 70% of that population spend 30 minutes every day on VoltSchool. And this is something interesting for us, which we're trying to put into research for future upgrades on the VoltSchool platform, the learning path. We're trying to see, is it possible for us to build an AI model that would be able to give recommendations on the right learning path? We have the student part, we have the topics, and we have the assessment. After we have done, be able to segment all this data into these 3 categories, we set up a matrix for the student. We try to now then run a filter across these 2. So the goal of the filter is to find the similarities between the matrix for the users and the matrix for the topics. We tried the linear distancing. This was pretty slow, and we weren't getting the required results. So we changed it, and we tried the Pearson's correlation, and wasn't giving us the optimized result. And then we optimized later on to the cosine similarity, which gave us something close to what we expect. So we can see in this whole broad spectrum here of the neural network which we're trying to build. Thank you very much for listening to.
Okay, thank you very much, Oba.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to my slide. Okay. And so I would also just introduce our second project spotlight, and Rachel. And so after Rachel is done with her presentation, we will have a pause for you to ask if you have any questions for Oba or Rachel. We'll have a pause for you to be able to ask those questions.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much. So should I try and share my screen? Or,
yes, yeah,
okay.
yeah, feel free. Yeah.
Everyone can hear me okay? Let's see. I think I need to pick the other. Sorry. Okay, share screen. There we go. Okay. So can everyone see that well? I'm Rachel Aronoff, and I founded a Swiss association called AGIR, Action for Genomic Integrity Through Research, quite some time ago now. But a couple of years after that, I heard about open science and Hackwarium and biohacking. And suddenly I realized this is going to be the place for me to do experiments for my own group, Agir. So Agir is really about public health, and the biohacking world is about everything. But of course, this pandemic season, we could call it, since it's already over a year and a half, or feels more than a year and a half, this has brought me really into JOGL, and we were very fortunate to get together such an amazing team and get funding from JOGL for this work, the R&D for Corona Detective, a simple and reliable diagnostic test for the RNA of the virus. So I guess I'm just I was aiming for a 5-minute talk, so hopefully if there are any questions, we'll have time to just go back and talk more about things and about even details of the molecular biology. But just quickly, I want to say that, of course, everyone at the community lab Aquarium has also been living through this pandemic. So we're trying to fight the virus with Corona Detective. The idea is that surveillance screening might help, especially in places like in Africa, where vaccines aren't getting there like they should, and also in countries where you would think the vaccination should be already over the sort of protective herd immunity level. We see that people are slowing down and getting worried and hesitant about getting their vaccine. So we think surveillance screening might still have a role to play in bringing this pandemic to an end. And CRE is where the inspiration for Corona Detective came from. And it was all really brought together within JOGL about open science and about documenting our work to make a sort of lamp in dark COVID times. So LAMP is actually loop-mediated isothermal amplification, which is the molecular method we use to detect the virus. It's a little bit like PCR, but it's in some ways more complicated, in other ways more simple. You can do it all at one temperature. And the great thing about Corona Detective is that all the reaction tubes are freeze-dried, so they can be shipped with no cold chain dependence, and that allows people anywhere to use this method. So it was all inspired by something called the Gmo Detective, which was developed as an open science educational thing by Guy Edelberg in Ariel Lindner's lab at the CRE in Paris. And this just gives an overview of how that works, because it's basically the same thing for Corona Detective, just the little primers are the difference that are very specific for the virus. Instead of being, as in Gmo Detective, they're specific for the transgenic modified ingredients that might be in your processed food that you don't know about because it's on the label. So the idea was that Gmo Detective was going to enable the whole world to be able to look for the DNA of transgenic, say, soybeans or corn within foods. And it's a very simple thing. It's been mainly done as workshops, also in schools, also at Aquarium, both in our old lab in Renon and in our newer lab for our 5th birthday party. Guy came to Switzerland to do the Gmo Detective workshop with us. So you start from the food that you want to test. You do a very simple DNA extraction, includes some 95 degrees heating. Then the DNA is put in the test tubes with the freeze-dried reagents ready there to do the amplification. And it all goes into an incubator around 63 degrees for about an hour, and then you can see the fluorescence. And so Gmo Detective, like I said, hasn't just been done in workshops in Paris or in Switzerland, but also has been in Africa. I think besides Zimbabwe, it may also have already been somewhere else in Ghana. But here's a nice picture of a school where Knowledge Chikundi did this workshop also with the Ministry of Technology. And now we're hoping that the Corona Detective method, which we've already published open protocols for both use and production of these reaction tubes, that is our big hope, that it's going to be able to be distributed and used broadly. So right now we're in the midst of clinical validations. Reactions have been sent to Sri Lanka, Ghana, and Chile. There were some complications with the academic partners from CRE, but we think that everything is really happening now. And what we'd really love is to see production at scale. And that means like the possibility to make millions of reactions that are all basically the same, with independent validations by international regulators, and ultimately for surveillance screening to really keep people from passing the virus around. Because each time someone gets infected with these coronaviruses, they get a chance to acquire new abilities, maybe even to escape the vaccination, the protection of the vaccination. So this just shows some of the great people that came together to work on this project. There's Guy, there's me and Sam when we were hacking the old real-time fluorescence machine for the R&D here, Ellen, Sarah, Fernan, Thomas, who isn't here, but Harry tells me that Thomas Mboa is doing very well in Cameroon right now. I just asked him in the chat. There's Scott, there's Fran, there's the people in Sri Lanka, and there's the reaction. You can see when it's negative, it really looks dark. When it's positive, you see the fluorescence. And with the internal control for a cellular RNA as an extraction control, it works really well. In fact, we have a paper in press that we just sent the proofs in for. And I'm really glad to have the opportunity to have worked on this over the last year. So thanks to everyone in this global community, and to Thomas for the inspiration, Thomas Landran, I should say now. He was supposed to come visit Aquarium right before the pandemic started. And now here we are launching JOGL Africa. I'm really hoping that I can do more to contribute, and I look forward to helping and answering your questions. Is that good? Should I just go ahead and stop? I'll unshare the screen. So I can't hear anything now. It's sort of weird.
Yeah, I mean, we heard you very well. Thank you so much, Rachel. I was already commenting that we've started having a molecular biology crash course, but I think that we'll go deeper into the science of it in the future JOGL Africa sessions. But thank you so much for starting this wonderful project, and also thinking of its implementation beyond your immediate location to take it around the world. So that's brilliant. So I'm going to pause for a moment and invite one or two questions for Rachel and Oba, or if you have any comments on their projects or their initiatives, that you are very much welcome to share. So you can raise your hand. You can use the raise your hand feature so that I'll call you to ask your question, or you can also put in the chat and I'll ask on your behalf.
I saw one question in the chat before I started for Oba about the
okay.
Where was it? I think it was something about whether they could transfer what they were learning to their normal program.
There's a question from Anna here. So Anna was asking, is this a supplemental program to regular school, and can it be accredited back to their program? Oba.
It's not supplementary program. I like to use the word, it complements what they're already learning in school. So just see this like homeschooling in the way it's designed, where they can go to school, come back home, and then continue learning. The way education sometimes works in most countries in Africa is it will be difficult for you to accredit what you learn there to your programs that you're doing. You don't get additional points in school, for going through this. We just wanted to provide the digital content for students across Africa. and leave them to go through that process themselves and not tied to the existing programs which they're doing. Something interesting which we're seeing going on the platform, which is really exciting for us, is that we're beginning to see a group of people from the Islamic society communities, Quranic schools, who teach Quran, and most of the time don't let their students take Western education in quotes, which has more or less been the ground, the background ideology for why, when you think about things about Boko Haram and all these insurgents that is happening in places like Nigeria, we're seeing them going on the platform to learn and beginning to understand how education can influence the way they think, the ideologies, and all those different aspects, and see how we can also plug that into Islamic schools who teach Quran by the side and now come back to learn STEM education. So it's more or less just dangling in there. And whatever exists here, whether it be Quranic education, which they are learning, or whether it be they going to a proper four-wall school, they can always take all this knowledge and merge it at some point to help them through things like the final exams, which they will take, like the WAEC exams and things like that. So I would call it more complementary education. It doesn't replace the four-wall education, and it doesn't add to their program credits. Yeah.
Having worked in education myself, so I used to be a high school science teacher, I can really relate to Oba's project. The fact that, and also someone who loves to use technology to assess knowledge. Yeah, I can really relate to Oba's project. We need content that is relevant to learners in African countries, and it's been a struggle trying to find the right content, and also a struggle trying to help teachers develop the right digital skills to create that content. So I think VoltSchool is solving a real problem. Of course, there are challenges with access in certain communities and things that, when addressed, can make the program even more impactful. So yeah, well done to you, Oba. Do we have any more questions for either Oba or Rachel, or indeed both of them?
I just saw the question in the chat from Adrian, which is for me: how do I envision getting the reagents to the destination for Corona Detective? Produce them in Europe and ship them, or produce them locally? And in fact, we are working with the open bioeconomy people, and Fernand's lab in Chile is doing a lot also with making open enzymes. And additionally at CRE, they've already started making some of the different open enzymes from the free genes group. But for the at-scale production right now, the discussions we're having with there's one big company in America, they're really experts in freeze-drying things. And with them, we're actually thinking we're gonna buy the NEB enzymes that we've been using the whole time. And those will be made in America, shipped to them in America, and then all the tubes for the proof of principle, we hope will go to where they can do the most good. We need at least 300 reactions for the regulatory bodies, some international independent regulatory okay. And I think that's how we're going to try it for this first proof of principle. But then you have to decide how many reactions per quarter or per year are actually going to be needed. And so it's really a huge outside of my experience base. So we need people who know about negotiations and business and things like that too, to join in our team and help with all this. But yeah, we hope that there will be both the possibility for localized production for people who can, just because the enzyme cost is the most expensive part of the reaction right now. But also our labeled primers are a little bit expensive. So for the nucleotides and the primers, you're still stuck buying things. And yeah, it's, again, these big unknowns. We're still learning things about the virus. We're going to learn more things about how to make a diagnostic assay, that's for sure.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited by the collaborations that you've built around the project and the fact that it's possible for people to begin to make some of these reagents locally, like the open bioeconomy. They are doing a fantastic job making local enzymes and making enzymes locally, and that's very important to be able to sustain some of these initiatives. Okay, so I think we'll just charge forward to look at what we have specifically in the context of JOGL Africa. So I'm going to share my screen again. Here we are. Oh, sorry. Before we go to the presentation on JOGL Africa, this has become a tradition for the JOGL meetings where we take group photographs. So I think that we'd like to take a quick group photograph and then we go to the JOGL Africa. I can see that people are already turning their cameras on. So if you haven't turned yours on already, can you please turn your camera on so we can have a nice quick group photograph. I'm going to take one, and I'm going to request that someone on the team also takes one so that we have we have Harry and Valerian.
Valerian.
All the way from Cameroon.
Yeah.
Okay, cheers. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's continue. All right, so the idea behind this presentation is to basically share the goals of JOGL Africa, what we've begun to do so far, and then open the rest up for general discussions with everybody. So why should we have a program which is specifically focused on developing open science and tech in Africa? First of all, there are a lot of interesting things happening. There are a lot of global and regional initiatives, which is looking at centering sustainable development. So I know that we are all aware of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, for example. The African Union also has its Agenda 2063, which is looking at how do we build the Africa we want. And these policies are very important because they've been set to respond to challenges that we face. One of the main challenges Africa faces at the moment is rapid urbanization. For example, more and more people are moving into cities. Populations are increasing, particularly youthful populations. So these are development challenges, but they are also development opportunities in the sense that a highly educated resource youth population in Africa can actually help to increase economic performance and therefore lead to transformation of the continent. We know that technology is becoming a very important aspect of every conversation these days. Internet, for example, is getting into every hand. African countries have been striving a lot to ensure that our societies are more equitable, we have democracy, and there's full participation of everybody. If you add this global movement of openness in science and openness in research, where people are calling for research to be more responsive to the needs of society, we see that harnessing communities, harnessing capabilities, harnessing available resources to create a landscape or a scheme in which more and more people can contribute to knowledge can actually help to better address the challenges that we face. And so what JOGL Africa seeks to do is not to reinvent the wheel, because there are lots of efforts and initiatives already in place for participation and the use of technology in development. We know of initiatives like the Next Einstein Forum, for example, which is looking at ensuring that the next generation of global scientific contributors also includes Africans. The African Open Science and Hardware Movement, for example, is looking at making open science and hardware ubiquitous around the continent. And so what JOGL Africa seeks to do is to enable and support various initiatives around community-driven open science and tech. And how do we do this? Is by fostering collaborations among various African stakeholders. So all the initiatives that are already in place and all the new initiatives that are coming, initiatives that will be led by people like you. We create a landscape where we are able to foster collaborations among these initiatives. And over the past few years, JOGL as an organization and as a platform has become quite visible. And we are a small organization and we are still growing, but at the same time, we should be able to use our visibility and global connections, the benefit of various African initiatives that are using open science and tech to highlight some of the efforts that you're already doing. And therefore, by getting connected to each other and by enabling these collaborations, we can begin to form partnerships that we can use to address emerging challenges and also take advantage of emerging opportunities. So basically, this is what JOGL Africa is all about. How do we do this? And why are we doing this? We are doing this because we want to raise awareness about problems in various local communities. And for these local communities to begin to look at how do we develop solutions. So for example, in Ghana, there's a community called the IoT Network Hub who are interested in using Internet of Things, for example, to understand challenges with various issues, be they environmental issues or others. So empowering these local communities is of importance. We want to be able to work with projects that will lead to the creation of scientific and technological commons. So for example, when Rachel was presenting, she's spoken a lot about the tools they are creating, the methodologies they are creating, and the fact that they've openly published their results that everybody else can take advantage of. We want to be able to create these projects in an African context, because we know, for example, that projects are created with intellectual property that are highly expensive. It's really difficult for these projects to be replicable in other contexts. So we want to be able to do that. And for individuals, some of you who are students or young professionals, for example, you are looking to build your social capital, you are looking to build networks. By being part of the JOGL community, you get to connect to the innovators, the problem solvers in Africa, but indeed get to connect to innovators and problem solvers all around the world as well. And at the same time, by volunteering on projects on the JOGL platform, you get to build your experience, which makes you more employable and also makes you ready to start your own initiatives. We are also really open to work with various foundations and organizations around the world. And what we offer to them is being willing collaborators. We either collaborating with we ourselves as JOGL or taking advantage of our network to find potential collaborators for them, and also help organizations achieve their goals by helping them to create impact in local communities. And so the way we want to go about doing this, first of all, is to invite all of you to be part of our regional ecosystem of open science and tech contributors. And like I said before, we are really open to developing programs with various organizations that want to partner with us so that we can be able to provide opportunities to open science and tech projects and communities on the continent. So one thing that is readily available to foster this agenda is the JOGL platform. So the JOGL platform, it's ready. It has the capability to host not only African projects, but from projects and communities around the world. And so they can begin to use JOGL to create their projects, to look for contributors and to look for partners. So that's something that is already happening and that's already doable. And at the same time, like we already discussed, mentioned, like using the methodologies that we've developed, for example, Open COVID-19, where there has been support through a micro grant system, the community-based open peer review, where members of the community get to assess projects that are presented to be able to identify the projects that are working very well. We want to make those tools available and accessible to African open science and tech contributors as well on the JOGL platform. And like I already hinted, access to expertise and mentorship is also a possibility. And one of the ways that we want to do this is also running periodic workshops, free workshops and events that can help science and tech contributors on the continent to develop not only in their scientific skills, but also leadership skills, which is very crucial.
Emily, can you share your screen? I think that you have some things to show as well.
Sorry?
I think you had some nice slides for some of this.
Oh, sorry, I didn't share my slides. Oh, okay, Paige, thank you very much. Apologies for all along. I thought I was sharing my slides with you. Okay. I hope it's visible now.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so basically the idea is that open science and technology should be for everyone. And so what we want to do is to reduce the barriers to make it possible for everybody to be able to be part of the open science and tech movements. So when we say individuals, we are talking about people who are artisans, people who are researchers and teachers. We are talking about students. There are a whole lot of community labs and open and maker spaces that are springing up. People who work in these spaces can all be part of the JOGL Africa community. We are also talking about groups, organizations, and communities that already exist. If you are a hackathon organizer, an innovation company, maker space, science, technology, innovation network, and even government institutions can all be part of this, because the idea is that the scientific community is fragmented. You know, we have people in higher education, we have people in industry, we have people in NGOs, we have people in local communities, people in schools. Everybody in all these groups are busy doing their own stuff, but we want to be able to bring the scientific community together. And so that's one possibility. And so for our African Community Call series, we have the opportunity to be able to bring experts as well as project leaders on a whole range of disciplines. So some of our proposed workshops that we want to offer include, for example, looking at open and community science, delving more into the details of it and what's about. Looking at the whole idea about the fourth industrial revolution, not only discussing it in the context of the future of work, but what does it mean for social innovation in Africa? We want to be able to do workshops around important topics like fundraising, intellectual property, project management. And we also have an exciting hackathon around antimicrobial resistance that we hope that those of you who are interested in public health, for example, can also compete in and be able to get a small grant that will support your project. We also have a proposed makerspace store. I know that there are few people who have community labs or makerspaces. So Rachel, for example, Harry at the Hive Biolab, Valerian from the Bongo Tech Hive in Tanzania, Babashile from Green Microfactory Nigeria. So how are these maker spaces set up, and what do they have and what do they do? I'm sure some of you will be interested to learn more about that, for example. Yeah, so if you are interested in collaborating with JOGL in any way on any of these topics going forward, we are very much open to collaborate with you to develop these programs. And also, if there are other topics that you think that are very important, that we should rather pay attention, again, our doors are widely open to discuss the possibilities. And so I was talking about antimicrobial resistance. So we've had a wonderful opportunity to be able to set up a first project on antimicrobial resistance. So we are developing an antimicrobial resistance community. So we are calling it Africa Against Antimicrobial Resistance. So you can actually visit the space that we've created for it on JOGL. And this is not something that we are developing by ourselves. This project involves various collaborators. We have Chris, who is also in charge of peer review at JOGL, involved. We have Harry from the Hive Biolab in Kumasi, Ghana, involved. We have Dr. Linda Salekwa, who is also in the call today, from the Mbeya University of Science and Technology in Tanzania, involved. So the idea behind this project is we are developing materials to teach microbiology and antimicrobial resistance, as well as digital mapping to students and lab technicians around Africa. So this course will be delivered online. And so when we are ready to sign up participants, we'll share the link. And if you're interested in it, please let us know so that you can also learn and benefit from this. If you are an expert in public health or microbiology who wants to contribute to this project, please get in touch. The idea is that after the initial workshop, we will take advantage of a software project being developed by Harry called Microbase to map spots of antimicrobial resistance starting from Ghana and Tanzania. But as we are building this community over time, we will strive to extend the capability to other countries. We'll be running a hackathon as well as a microgrant challenge later on, where one project that participates in this will have the opportunity to win a microgrant that they can use to develop their project. The main condition is that the project must be an intervention that is helping to address antimicrobial resistance. So excited to share more about these opportunities in the future going forward. And so I've been talking a lot about why as an individual you can participate in the JOGL Africa community. And many of the points up on the slide here I've already spoken about. There is one specific opportunity open to you, which is the JOGL Ambassadors Program, that as an individual who is part of JOGL, you can be part of. And so to speak about the JOGL Ambassador Program, I'd like to invite my colleague Paige once again to tell us more about how it is set up.
Thanks, Gamili. Yes, so this is a thing we've been thinking about for a long time. And well, if we're all interested in open science here, that's not the case for all the world, as we've seen earlier. And so there's still a huge need to kind of preach the open science and open tech gospel. And that starts by engaging kind of younger people and early career change makers. So that's what we want to do. We want to work with them and start creating kind of events and content that dissipates to the whole world. And so there's much more about the Ambassadors Program on JOGL, on a space that we've created. I'll show you the link in here, but please follow us on Twitter, on LinkedIn. The applications are open, and if you know anyone in your networks that might be interested in being an ambassador and work with JOGL, reach out.
Thank you very much, Paige. Okay, so why should we participate in JOGL as a community or organization. We already spoke about our spaces feature, for example, that can help you to organize your projects and organize members of your community. But going beyond that, you become part of a larger system of collaborators. And you know that, remember the African proverb that says that if you work alone, you can go very fast, but if you work together, you can go very far. So collaboration is very much important for us to be able to make the difference that we all seek to make. And so that's one reason why to join JOGL. We see for different types of organizations who have different core audiences, being part of JOGL also means that you get visibility in among a new set of audience, which is people specifically interested in open science and open tech innovation, rather than some of the specific core audiences that they are already connected to. And the fact that science and innovation in Africa is growing, and with many people already part of the community who are interested, the opportunity to connect to what's happening on the ground. And I think that with the underground connection comes the opportunity to create and sustain more impact. So communities and organizations are also very much welcome to be part of what we have to offer. So basically, all that we've been saying in summary is the fact that to be able to address some of the most difficult challenges that we face, we need collaboration, whether the collaborations at the local, national, regional, or global level. It's very important. And through JOGL's digital platform, we have the opportunity to be able to make these collaborations happen. And so African innovators, African problem solvers like yourselves are very much welcome to be part of this journey with us. So I'm going to pause and open up the conversation once again. If there are any questions, comments, etc., please feel free to ask them even before we move into the discussion part of the program. Okay, so there's a question from Alexis asking whether artisans, why are artisans important? So I think that one of the things from my personal experience is the fact that there's always this gap between people who are working on the fancy high-tech projects, software, and now a lot about microcontrollers. And even now we are talking about the do-it-yourself biology, for example, and then the general community, people who are making things like tools and all the carpenters and the designers and the rest. And with this gap comes a disconnect between maybe reality and a disconnect between reality and then the kind of challenges and issues that people are solving. And one of the things that it's quite visible sometimes is that people develop very good projects, but then these projects never get into products that are in the hands of people. So I think that collaborations between artisans who know how to package products and people who are already people who are also highly skilled in terms of technology can actually help to create more workable and solutions that are really working in communities. There are also other groups for example, people like electricians or people who are into electronics who are repairers. They have certain specific skills, but then the kind of equipment that they work with, some of the more sophisticated equipment, they don't have the skills to be able to use some of the more sophisticated equipment. So how do we train and capacitate these people to be able to deal with more sophisticated equipment, for example, be part of the solutions that various open projects here in Africa can address, because we are all familiar with how certain expensive equipment in certain institutions, when they get spoiled, are no longer useful and nothing can be done about them. So, I mean, there can be some kind of exchanges and ideas around being more proactive about sustaining these things. Okay, so I think that from now we'll just move straight into our discussion segment. We really want to hear from you, and also just to create the opportunity for us to have more in-depth discussions around some of the topics. So we have some questions. If people would like to address them, that would be great. So so the discussion is, we want to understand the open science landscape in Africa. So we have 4 main questions. So the first question is that who are the actors? Where are the opportunities? What are the challenges? And I think that it's better we all speak from our own experience in terms of work. And then what kind of support is needed to advance open science for sustainable development in Africa? So we will break into breakout rooms for roughly 10 minutes to have these discussions. So each breakout room, the people in each breakout room will be discussing this same 4 questions. So I would like to request if you can please maybe screenshot the questions so that you can be able to refer to them for your breakout room. Yeah, and also I would like to recommend for each breakout room to nominate somebody to be a note taker, so that at the end of the breakout room, the note taker can then quickly share with all of us what was discussed in the breakout room.
And Gamili, how long do we have in the breakout rooms?
So I think we can do 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start them right now.
Okay, so the rooms are going to be assigned randomly.
So you should have all been invited via some sort of box at the bottom of your Zoom screen to join the breakout room. And if you have any trouble, just let me know in the chat.